is up? Welcome to the Sunday Debrief podcast, where we believe that unapplied truth is like unapplied paint. It does nobody any good. I've been waiting to say that, actually. But the reality is, what we're trying to do with these podcasts is take what we heard on Sunday, have a conversation with some fantastic people around mission, but just have a conversation about what it really means to our everyday lives, how we process what we hear, how we figure out what it looks like to live in that way, and not just hear it and feel smarter, but actually live it and be better. And that's what we're talking about today. This time, we're talking about fighting right, and a little different. We got guests who are not in a relationship because they are in relationships with other people, but not each other, because I thought me having marital counseling with a couple would not be a great podcast episode. So I'd love you to introduce yourselves. Matt kicks off.
My name is Matt Hoosen, and here I am. Welcome. Awesome to be here.
Yeah. How long you been at Mission?
Oh, man. I always forget. I think it's like around 7 or 8 years or so. Yeah.
That's about the same amount of time Lauren and I think it was like literally right around the same time.
Right.
Love it. Love it. Anna?
I'm Anna. Anna Mason. I have been at Mission since kind of 2015 when you were my boss.
That's
and I was an intern.
Best intern class ever. I mean,
thank you.
That's what I remember.
I hope none of the other intern classes listen to this.
I'm sure they're listening to everything.
For sure.
All the time. But.
Yeah. But I was out here for the summer and then went back, finished school, and moved out here. So officially full-time missioner. So that's what we're going to call ourselves.
That's what we call ourselves now.
The missioners?
Since 2016.
With a mascot?
Missionites?
Yeah, I like it.
Ooh, that sounds like a rock.
A what? Really? A
Missionite?
rock? Missionite? That does sound like a rock. Cool. Well, we are rocks. That's what we want to be.
Gems.
Steadfast and sturdy. A gem. That's probably nicer.
Yeah.
Diamond in the rough. Okay. So fight right. I am glad Mike started the way he did, because really a lot of this depends on your fight style. And so I would love to know, this is full transparency here. This is how we do this because it matters. What is your fighting style? But also, what is a beautiful / slightly embarrassing example of your fighting style at its best?
I would like to say that I dabble in all of them
when connoisseur,
when appropriate or inappropriate, probably more likely. But I think it depends on, do I want to win the fight or do I want reconnection, right? And so normally I would say I'm a sulker, mostly. But if I'm like looking to win and I'm going to hurt your feelings on the way out, then I'm stealth bombing. And I would
those two pair nicely.
It's super fun.
Right.
Yeah. You can stealth bomb and then sulk. And then they don't know if they should approach you or not.
Impressive.
So good.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
My example is that when I was in college, this guy that I liked, he ended up asking out the girl that I mentored, whose name was Anna. So it seemed
awesome.
like that was very frustrating for me. And in that moment, I did not want reconnection. I just wanted to punch a pillow and hurt his feelings. And so I, called him up and basically told him everything that I, thought about him that was not any of the nice parts. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then I hung up and then I did punch the pillow.
It's very legitimate stealth bombing.
Yeah. So hard to recover after that, I would say. So I try not to do that, but
more damage.
Every once in a while, I still do it.
Yeah.
So good.
Nice. Well, thank you for your transparency.
I think that I am more of a mixture of the trash compactor and the Arctic Tundra. So I think I'm an Arctic compactor is what my wife and I decided I was today. I really like to just compact those things all together and pile them up in somewhere in my brain and just store them away.
And freeze them.
And then freeze up.
But it's a cryogenic freezing because they're coming back.
They are coming. They do tend to come
Santa
back
Claus.
later. And it's always harder to figure out why later. You're like, why do I do that?
Can't even remember.
It was when I was 20 or whatever, But my most recent one, those are like my go-tos for the real bad stuff. But my most recent stuff is it's been stress-related toddler action. Ooh, I am just, just opening my mouth, saying things that are just like a little kid when I am under stress and under the fire of life. And I'm like, and I look back and like after I say something, I'm like, what was that? Like, what are you doing? I feel that. Just putting the old foot in the mouth. So that's me right now.
Love it. I do dabble in all of these. I trash compact quite a bit, but it could be more of a sulker. I don't know. Like it's hard to tell them apart for me, which is probably part of the problem. I'm not always sure which one is which. High self-awareness. But then I become a random prosecuting attorney.
Yeah.
And it's like out of nowhere, I'm like, well, you are fighting wrong. And so that invalidates your actual needs and what's really the issue. And you weren't supposed to do that. These are off limits. I'm like a rule keeper at that point. I'm like, well, it's a mistrial. Am I right? It's a mistrial. We can't do this because you're fighting not fair. And we just can't do this anymore. And I win, right?
I think part of the question sometimes is, do you feel hurt or do you feel just angry at the other person? Because if you're hurt, maybe you're sulking. And I say you as in like me.
Like me. Yeah.
If I'm hurt, I might be sulking. If I think they're just in the wrong and I need to tell them, then I'm stealth bombing or you're prosecuting. You know?
Yeah, it's so true. I think that really all of this ends up being like, how am I actually feeling? Because if it's like I'm angry and I feel conflict because somebody hurt somebody I love, that's a lot different than hurt me. And some of that's like, well, yeah, you did hurt somebody I love and that's not okay. Or I'm angry at the injustice of the world. Like that's a healthy conflict right there.
That's right.
It's a lot different than just getting hurt.
Right.
It's a good point because I think if we identify only one fighting style ever, then it's going to really throw us when we react differently because maybe we haven't prepared for what do I look like when this happens.
Yeah. They'll react differently depending on who the person is that the conflict is with as well. So with my wife, it'll be a lot different than with somebody that maybe I'm working with, one of the employees we got, or just a random friend or anything like that. So there'll be some different fighting styles that come out depending on who it is.
Well, that's interesting. Do you... It's just me, but do you have better control over your fighting style with people that are not as close to you?
Absolutely.
Why do we do that? Am I right? Like I'm so consistently dropping my guard, I guess, or something with my wife, who I'm closest to, because I feel like, wow, she can take it. Like, it's the last person that should deserve to take it. But it really does happen. And there's so much more cleanup to be done because I'm not honoring her above all else. I'm treating her as closer to me, which means she gets the worst of
It's that weird paradox that happens. It's like I go to work all day and dealing with customers and clients and treating them up to these standards of, what I want to do for a client. And then I'll get home and I'll be like just done with the day. And all of my terrible traits come out on my wife, who I love the most and don't want that to happen to. Yeah. So stress is a big one for sure. You know, that can definitely bring out the worst in us and me.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very true. So one of the things, and I thought it was really helpful, and Mike went here next. I guess it's helpful that the Bible goes here next, so maybe we won't give all the credit to Mike. But the verse from James 4, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Which was so helpful. And then even to make it as clear. And the first time I heard even Mike say this about conflict, this idea of like, you know what the problem is here? I'm not getting what I want. And I watched his hand like go to point at the next person, then flip around back to himself. I was like, whoa, that's so hard to do. And it was really interesting because it was exactly what I needed to hear. Not exactly what I always realize in the moment, because it's so easy to think about what they did wrong. But what does that feel like to you? Like, what does that bring up in you? This idea that our quarrels between us come from the desires that quarrel within me, even like the battle between us is actually due to the battle inside of me. Like, where do you see that playing out in destructive ways in all the relationships you've got, but then also where does that help you and how does it help you turn the tide on a conflict?
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about kind of the communication part of it, aspect of it. You know, it's like if I'm not communicating the things that I need with my wife or with my employees or with anybody that's around me, then it's the communication breakdown is just it's going to lead towards just destructive sort of conversations and such. And so kind of communicating what I need well, and really looking at what the problem is, so what the nail is. So like, that nail in the head
Best
video that came up was so good.
Ever.
Yeah. So just being able to identify that nail, so there's not all these, mislabeled feelings and hurt feelings and pain coming up areas that really aren't there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Knowing what the nail is. That makes it very clear.
Yeah. So I work these days as in marketing, but at a trauma therapy and addiction treatment company. And so I think about these underlying issues a lot because I'm writing about them a lot. And so I end up thinking a lot about them in myself. And I think there are some times where there's a surface level need where I can say, today I didn't feel enough affection from you, or today, I felt like you were too focused on work or something. But that happens. I feel like I have a handle on those pretty typically, whereas a lot of times the stuff that actually turns into conflict for me, and for my boyfriend and I specifically, is stuff that I can't quite put my finger on from the past, or maybe I can put my finger on it, but it feels such a deep need that maybe long ago wasn't met, that it's very difficult to even define what I need. So, and then it becomes difficult to resolve the conflict. So, I mean, I'm thinking like, so I was just talking with my boyfriend about this today. Actually, I think I have this like really, really distinct need for strong, secure connection. And then this really distinct fear of loss of strong, secure connection. And so that makes me a little bit afraid to build a strong, secure connection. Yeah. So I tend to back away a little bit, and then I tend to be mad at myself. And that comes out of like, I'm putting my stuff on other people and I'm watching it hurt other people. And that is exhausting for me. And I feel terrible, but I don't quite know how to stop doing that. And so I think this question of needs really comes back to like what's your baggage? What needs weren't met? Maybe when you were a kid or in previous relationships that you have become ultra sensitive to those things.
And for such good reasons too.
Such good
because
reasons.
Those needs should have been met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they can be met now.
Right.
But it often takes a lot more active work on my part to articulate what those needs are. Whereas maybe for another person who doesn't have the same sort of stuff, easily met.
I think we all got something similar to that kind of stuff where we built these protective kind of behaviors that we've had from like when we were younger. The things happened that we just learned how to build up so we could live life and still be happy.
Survive,
and then survive. And then we get to, our 20s, 30s, 40s, and those behaviors are still there. And maybe they're not serving us anymore, but they're still there.
Well, and because we can't articulate them, it's like, well, yeah, this is how people are, right? Or this is how you have to deal with this. Because what if this happened? And somebody else is like, you actually finally say that out loud, and somebody else is like, I've never thought that once in my life. You're like, no, you're lying. You're like, no, really. You're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Which makes so much sense. It's the thing that's in me. And then we're having this conflict too. And it's not about like the nail, but nobody knows what the nail is because the nail is also a thing that can't be solved right here because it's about something from 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
It's really destructive when that happens, which for me, probably one of the biggest things for me. No, the biggest thing is knowing it in myself. I was like, the biggest thing for me is how I can help others. No, that's not true. That's crap. It's actually, I need to figure it out in myself. Another helpful way to look at that has been for me to realize that the person on the other side of the argument is not my enemy.
Yeah.
They're a hurt person also.
Absolutely.
And I'm actually part of the solution. in the way that I handle the conflict. Like the conflict isn't bad in itself. Reframing conflict, which I love. What was the quote? It was conflict is a vigorous way to fight is a vigorous way to solve the problem of two people disagreeing while wanting to remain connected.
Yeah.
Which I love because it's so true. If it's that, then it's like, well, the goal is what you said, Anna, the reconnection. If that's the goal, and I have to move past the offense to the need that's not being met, I'm not getting what I want. Well, neither are they. And if I can get there, it starts to change everything.
Yeah. And the strange part is sometimes the way to meet the need is not necessarily that the person has to correct the offense, but that you have to kind of resolve in your own self. Like, I think right now, my biggest thing is I feel like I have anxiety. I feel like I bring a lot of baggage to the table, and I often try to resolve that in myself on my own. And so, when someone offends me or I get anxious, the answer to that is not, it's not to make them apologize. It's to like, probably for me, it's to like go to therapy and figure out how to manage that, but also to invite the other person in. So I don't just like hold this baggage without letting them help.
Right. It's so helpful to get that communication of like what's really going on with you. And then the other person is their chance to just have grace, some love, some grace, some kindness, and just walk through that stuff with you. Because if they don't know that, oh, that's anxiety, what anxiety looks like, they don't get a chance to be like, oh, well, this is my chance to come alongside you and, have some grace for your stuff. I mean, that is so huge right there when my wife is going to school and working full time and I'm working long hours and we come home from stressful days and, for us just to have that grace for each other because we're not going to come home with the prettiest of behaviors. And so, just to be able to have that grace has been huge.
Yeah, that's great. It starts to make sense, so much sense of the whole Adam and Eve epic, right? Why the first response was hiding and blaming. Because the desperate fear in Adam and Eve is not like, oh man, now I got to deal with the consequences. It's like, I broke the rules. God's going to be so disappointed in me. That's how I read into it.
Yeah, the shame there.
And the shame is so palpable because it's hiding. It's not like, all right, let's go to war. Or like, I'm going to defend myself. It's none of that. It's like, please take this off of me. It hurts. Like the amount of responsibility that I've placed on my shoulders, I can't bear it. And it's too much. And so the only option there is grace. Like God doesn't, in the story too, he says like, you're going to die if you do this. And then guess what he doesn't do? He doesn't kill him. And I know that's like, well, whoop-de-doo, God, you didn't kill him. But for real, I like direct disobedience. I don't know what the rules were. It sounds like God was like, I'm going to have patience, start the story because I'm going to then fix it later. But the shame is so deep. And the only way to do something with that shame is grace. It's not correcting behavior and it's not consequences. No, it's like it has to start with grace. And that does make a lot of sense. So when we get into fixing some of this, some of it sounds like that deep work that we have to do in ourselves to know what we're bringing to the table. Right. But Mike gave us a bunch of practical tools that I think also part of this is not just like, well, someday I'll do enough work to bring a perfect self to a fight and then they'll just start going well every time. Like, well, probably not. No. So since that's not the only thing, that's part of the thing. It's not the only thing. Part of it is we have to start fighting better so that we can maybe stop reaping destruction wherever we go, because that's going to help, right? No new wounds or fewer.
Right.
That counts. Wounds. It's part of the deep work, right?
That's true.
It's learning things about yourself to be able, and about whoever, you're in relationship with, romantic or friend or coworker, and being able to set rules and do these things together to, not to compensate, but to fill in the gaps so that God's power be made perfect in your weakness. Yeah. It's pointing out the weakness so that you know when to invite God's power in to be strong there.
Well, it's so interesting too. One of the reasons, even to like any small group experience at Mission, if the leader's following the rules, we always read this group statement beforehand, and it's all these ground rules. And I've gotten so many questions in the past, like, why? This is weird. Like, can't we just like have a nice discussion? I'm like, yeah, you can have a nice discussion if you read the rules. They're not rules for life either. They're rules for this conversation, because expectations are really helpful and they preserve relationships so that we don't overstep and go, oh, I got to clean that up. I'm like, well, let's try not to clean stuff up, or at least know what we have to clean up. And they all make a lot of sense and they're nice and easy. But what are some of those things for you guys? Let's see. I mean, we could talk about any of these practical ideas, rules and prayer and fighting for each other and all that. But let's start on rules, because I like that. What conflict rules do you have to abide by, maybe to preserve what you know you need, but then also to make sure that you don't do that thing that you know you're capable of? How you protect the other person and protect yourself in the right ways? What are some of those rules?
I don't know if we have like any like really like written down rules, which would probably be a really good idea to actually sit down and have that conversation. Like, what sort of ground rules do we want to have? You know, luckily for us at this point, and we've gone through some doozies with my wife and I, but today, like most of the things that we're going through are just kind of smaller things at the moment, which is nice. But yeah, so we haven't really sat down and made really distinct rules, but we do have one rule that has stuck through since the beginning, is that you are allowed a redo. Like, you are allowed to have a redo where you can just, no matter what you said or what you did, you can come back after that and be like, hey, I just need to do that over. Like, and that has been so significant in our relationship of just being able to say it's like a reset button. No matter what happened, it's like, okay, you get a redo. Like, I've done that before too.
I wish I said it this way the first time.
I did not.
That takes a big level of trust though too, because it's not I could see my untrusting self would look at that and go like, well, you tried the thing, oh, it didn't work, oh, but I got to say it and that felt good and now I'll clean it up. Like, so it takes a lot of trust to, like, that's believing the best about somebody that's not the case.
Absolutely.
And so you're really offering that vulnerable part to yourself to know, like, I might get hurt, but that's built-in grace. And it's also not unlimited. So it's like, no, you got to get it right at some point, because we need to get there.
It's just not like a weekly or daily occurrence. Like, you don't get a daily redo.
Yeah,
it's just
helpful.
like, it's very...
you get 3 cards a month. Something like that.
We don't overuse the redo.
But yeah, no, the idea is so helpful though, because it means you have to rely on the trust system, which is super important for a relationship.
And there's a difference between a redo and like a perpetual behavior too, you know, and I think I have like little warning flags going off in my brain. You can cut this out if you want to, but I think it's important that as we're talking about healthy conflict cannot be had in an abusive relationship. I think it's important that like that rule works. The rules that we're talking about work when both people are invested in caring for each other.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And it's always like, we have the rules because they're guardrails, not free passes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because they have to be for the health of the relationship. And so the ultimate guiding light, I don't know, the ultimate marker that we're looking after is like, is the health of our relationship going up or down?
Absolutely.
And so if it's going down, but we're following the rules aren't good enough. And honestly, even knowing, well, less conflict is also not the sign of a healthier relationship. It's that both people are feeling accepted and significant and secure and cared for, and also both are being pushed to thrive and empowering each. It's the mutual submission. It's the rest of the series, actually. So that's really good. But that's like, we have to keep the rules aren't the point. The rules help us not injure each other unnecessarily, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's
for two
good.
people who aren't trying to injure each other actively.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, I like that. That's really good. What about you? What are some rules?
Yeah, this is interesting. So my boyfriend and I have been working on fighting better. I hate conflict. I would prefer not to fight at all ever with anyone.
It's literally why I invited you to. I knew that. So I thought it would be fun to have you on for this one.
It makes my body hurt to be in a conflict physically, because I would just rather, and that's some childhood stuff for me, is like I kind of made it my role in my family to be okay and make sure everyone else was okay when times were hard. So that's my own stuff. But so now I'm having to learn how to fight, because I'm in a healthy relationship where my boyfriend cares about me and we care about making progress and having connection and working out disagreements, which like is kind of new. I've had one-sided relationships before. So fighting is new. But one of the things that we are working on is not being at odds with each other. Like the concept that Mike was talking about like really putting yourself either physically or metaphorically on the same side of the table. Because we've had some times where it'll pop up and I'll be like, I feel like the enemy right now. Or he'll close off because he feels like I'm not meeting his needs. And so to be able to functionally say like, we are working towards each other and that's the goal. And like, we've started having to even say that, like, I feel angry. My goal here is to reconnect with you.
That's great.
And so when I want to figure out stuff in my life, I read articles. It's like one of my things. So I was reading some stuff from
prosecuting attorney stuff coming up. I see.
Yeah, maybe. Or it's like being a well-armed peacekeeper is more of how I think about it.
Much nicer twist on that.
It's not always helpful. So let's get that right. But sometimes I'm just well-armed and keeping the peace where maybe there needs to be some conflict. But no, so I'm not recommending this counselor or anything because I don't know much about them other than this good article that I read. But the Gottman Institute has a lot of relational tools, and they talk about making repair attempts. And when you are feeling disconnected or fighting, there are repair attempts that come up, and they may look a lot different. Like it may be someone saying, I feel scared, or it may be someone saying like, I feel defensive, or even the Brene Brown, like the story that I'm telling myself is it's this idea to like kind of come down from whatever the issue is and like person to person, look them in the eye and remember like each other's humanity and that you care for each other in order to de-escalate, right? It could even be just like reaching across the table and like putting your hand on their hand. Right. But it's all this signal of, hey, I want to reconnect. So a lot of times my boyfriend and I, our conflict will escalate because I'm trying to care for him and he's not feeling cared for. And so he's shutting down and I'm pushing and then I'm shutting down. And so we have to make repair attempts. So he'll reach over, or I'll say like, I feel scared of rejection right now. Or he'll say, you know, I'm really wanting to move towards you, but this is what all
this
these
is blocking me. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a mixture of owning your part, and being able to say like, hey, what I did was wrong and I'm moving towards you, and sitting on the same side and saying like, I feel angry at you right now, but I'm not fighting at you.
Right.
I want reconnection.
Yeah. Right. It really feels like you got to fight the meta issue and the issue itself. There's the issue, but then there's the way we're figuring out the issue. Yeah. And that's called a relationship, is the way that we go about solving our issues. Because literally two people moving closer is just bumping into each other's issues for the rest of your life, especially when it's like a significant other and then a spouse. You're like, we're going to bump into all each other's issues. That is the definition of a relationship. Because your issues don't matter to me if you're not in a relationship with me. So
that tool was really great that Mike brought out too, with the arrows on it, just to kind of be able to say like, for each individual issue that comes, like, where are we on this? Like, let's just take a breath for a minute and be like, are we going at each other on this? Are we on the same path, or is one just going a little bit different in a different direction? So just to kind of identify how far away you are on this issue and where do we really need some help on this?
And I like having some cues. Like you said, you guys have figured out a couple different ways that you do that and make those repair attempts.
Like have a screenshotted diagram, because it's hard. It's hard to incorporate them. Like when you learn this is what we were talking about earlier. When you learn a new relationship tool, you're like, that's super cool. Feels very awkward to use it for the first time. Right. And so like, you kind of have to talk about it and then clunk your way through it until it becomes a regular part of how you do something in a healthy way.
Yeah. Which is why it's so important to figure out how to fight while you're not fighting.
Right.
Yes.
It's really like, let's dissect that last fight. Now that we've repaired, let's make sure we don't get to the same place. Let's make it better next time.
Rules beforehand.
Yeah, totally. And it really, Yeah, and being able to pray. I think that's a great place. Like, because literally when he said pray, I was like, in the middle of the fight.
Together?
I'm telling you right now, it has saved some big fights to do with us.
Okay, so
it really has.
good.
Because it really
There you
checks
go.
off a lot of these lists if you do it at the right time. Like Elaine and I have sat across from each other at dinner time, and like we could just feel like the tension in the air at that point in time.
You're trying to cut your steak, but you realize you're cutting tension.
Before we even get there, it's like this is a chance for me to pray and let her know that I'm fighting for her. Be humble and be like, all right, I'm making some, take responsibility for my part of it. Guarding my tongue at the same time. I'm not going to say like some things in the middle of the prayer.
Now I'm legitimately talking to God.
My wife is like doing the wrong thing.
Stealth bombing your way through that prayer.
So you can really check off a lot of these boxes if you do a really good prayer at the right moment. Like, you can't do it right in the middle of the conflict. It's just not going to go over well. Like that's my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some people can do that differently, but I found like dinner time or like a chance where like things have kind of the dust has settled a little bit, and taking that time to pray has really takes the steam out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm praying for the next one because we know we're going to get here again, but I'm stating my intentions before. It's like we do even marriage, like before these witnesses and God. Maybe don't bring the witnesses every time in this case, but like I'm stating my intentions to honor you next time in a little bit better than this time. That really is a good way.
Yeah. Just inviting God into the process too is like huge. Like saying, we don't got this right now. Like we don't have this covered. We need you to come into this and really kind of and speak to our hearts, and it just makes a huge difference right there.
Really disarming. That's good.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes the needs that are at the core of the conflict are really needs that we should be looking to God to fill anyway. So just recentering and even recentering your minds on him and your intentions on him, I think. I mean, there's like, lots of people these days are into like meditation and breathing and some of that sort of thing, but there's power in taking a deep breath. There's like physiological, scientific evidence in breathing to calm yourself down. And so doing something that is physically helping you, maybe like slowing your speech down, lowering your tone, taking those deep breaths while you are not just like emptying your mind of things, but refocusing yourself on who God is and the way that he meets your needs. You're spiritually and physically, that like a calm prayer can be really powerful to change the way your body's feeling and the way that your mind is feeling and the spiritual focus.
Fun fact about breathing, for real, when you breathe through your mouth, it activates or it almost just prepares a specific nerve that is tied to your fight or flight response. And so the reality is, if you are in a fight or flight situation, you need as much oxygen as you can immediately. And so you breathe really deeply through your mouth. And so anytime you're breathing through your mouth, you're ready for fight or flight a little bit more. So breathing through your nose deactivates that nerve. And so if you really want to calm down, you breathe through your nose a few times and it like calms the adrenaline. It is fascinating.
It's like a nervous system thing.
Yeah.
Seriously. Well, it's like the reality is too, God created us as one thing, like mind, soul, spirit, body.
Right.
And you really have to treat your body as if, just the same way that you treat all the rest of you, because God gave us all the pieces and they all work together really well. That's really good. I don't do that well enough. And so that was a really big indicator for me recently. Hearing that was like, oh, right. I have to, my body, the body that I bring, like the physical state that I bring. Well, and you mentioned it earlier, Matt, you said stress. Like you walk in and one of the biggest questions often is like, well, I'm not getting no, I'm just stressed, man.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what did you do to me? Well, almost nothing, but I'm so behind at work that I just can't, like everything's a problem. Like, cool. So maybe don't take that out on my wife. Right. Or my kids. Check. Right. Okay.
And sometimes, so like when you are feeling, and this is like a medical concept, right? You can't treat, the full problem until you've dealt with the pain. And like that's a nursing thing, right? You have to, if a client's in pain, that's the only thing they're feeling
until that matters at the moment.
Right. Yeah. So if you're feeling like tense, or like for me, if I'm in conflict, my arms are hurting, right? What I probably need to do is is get out of the, like, I'm going to do everything I can to make myself less tense. And verbally, that's not going to go well for anyone. When I'm doing that, I'm going to stealth bomb the crap out of that.
Yep.
So what I really need to do is probably take some deep breaths. And for me in that time, prayer isn't always going to be really articulate. It might just be like, all right, I need a whole lot of help right now, God. Like, just calm me down. Or like, I'll do repetitive prayers sometimes, and that like, God is good, I'm going to be okay. God is good, I'm going to be okay while I'm breathing, so that my mind can't wander anywhere else in that prayer besides on truth.
The one thing
and
that
calming
matters.
down.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is great. There's so much we could talk about, and there's so many conversations to have, because this is like so much of our lives, right? And for somebody that also doesn't like conflict, which is me, Matt, you don't like conflict, right?
I'm a compactor. I like to put that stuff way back.
When you're an
like active freezer, then just freeze out. Don't talk about it. Yeah.
So we're great. All the non-conflict people.
Teaching people how to do conflict.
Just talking about it.
Just don't touch it.
Yeah, pretend it's not there, then it won't be. I think, therefore I am, right? If I think it's not there, it no longer is.
Can't see me.
Not the way it works. But I think the reality is that life is the working out of conflict, because also relationships are best on the other side of healthy conflict. And I need that reminder often, which helps me initiate the conversation. That's another thing Mike said. And that's my thing. Like this week, even, I think I need to get my reps in too. That's something I realized recently, is I need to initiate the conversation when it's not a high stakes deal. Because when it's a high stakes deal and I know I've disappointed somebody, I'm not going to initiate that conversation unless I get some reps in beforehand and I can do the small things and be like, hey, I said that thing earlier. Did you hear that wrong? Are we good? I just want to make sure. And somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm like, okay, well, whether or not you were good, I did it.
Yeah.
Like, pat myself on the back. I'm going to be okay next time I do it, because a lot of it is just the muscle memory. Last time I initiated a conversation, it was okay. Well, then the last time before that, it was okay. And so if I can keep getting those reps in, I think that's my thing this week. That's kind of the risk that I want to take this week, is to initiate more of those and move toward uncomfortable situations with people that matter to me before it's a high stakes deal. So what about you? What's a risk that you want to take this week to move forward in putting this stuff into real life?
For me, I would say just communication. I like the fact that the idea of coming home and preemptively saying, hey, I've had a really stressful day today. And like just trying to communicate like where I'm at inside. So before, and maybe that will help to diffuse that stress of coming home and feeling like short, with my words, and maybe it'll help to diffuse that. So that'll be my challenge.
Walk in with a status report.
Exactly.
Here's my stress status for the day,
I'm at
honey.
a 7 right now, stress wise.
Just need you to know.
My boss just yelled at me a little while ago, and so,
I'm getting ready to take it out on you. So
here,
I just need you to know that now.
Just do it ahead of time. I know. Fill out a little paperwork before I come in the door.
Sign this waiver.
We may try that out.
Tell me how that goes. Anna, what is a risky thing
Yeah.
you're gonna do this week?
I mean, like, big picture, my inability to handle conflict well without a lot of like personal pain coming up is not great right now. So this week I'm looking for a therapist in person. I've been online, but I like,
good step.
That's a big step.
Yeah. That's actually really good. I mean, we did some premarital counseling that it really came in handy for us along the way. I mean, to have two people that we know and trust and love that can just know those sticking points, those major things, help us to really be able to navigate those hard points when we're going through. Has been super helpful for the big things that we go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that is a good like long-term strategy, therapy, and it gives you some tools. But I also think that I need to put in reps too, and not just rely on the therapy to do all you know. And so my reps, which is not, I guess, directly related to a rule, but I tend to feel my stuff is that I feel a lot of guilt when I hurt someone else. And so then the conflict lasts way longer than it should because I am beating myself up and trying to fix things that are no longer broken. Long after the apology, I can't let it go. I'm just angry at myself.
Right.
And so then I'm trying to solve this conflict on my own in myself. So my thing this week is when I'm feeling this tension, even in myself or at myself, I am then disconnected from other people because I'm just trying to manage my own frustration. And so I am going to practice letting people into that and not letting myself run in this cycle of kind of being mad at myself that I run in cycles.
That's good.
And so inviting friends into that, safe friends, and then also with my boyfriend being able to say, I'm running this cycle through in my head right now. And no, it's not the truth, but I can't really get out of it. I'm going to invite you in so that we can be there together. I don't need you to fix it, but
setting the expectation, but like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm hoping for.
Yep.
Gosh, it's a game changer.
Yeah. I don't need you to fix it, but I'm not isolating you from it.
Yeah.
I think is what I want.
Awesome. Yeah. And that phrase that you use, that sounds a lot like it's one that Lauren uses too, my wife, the story I'm telling myself is, because then it's not indicting the other person.
That's right.
It's not like the story you're telling me, the story, I know I'm making this up and I'm going to allow you the chance to fix it. It's almost like I'm in pain and I need you to be my hero. Like that's good. Especially, that's just great. Like that's what we want anyway. I want you to correct the story because that leads to reconnection. It's awesome. Well, you guys, thank you for jumping in here. This is a great one. And I love this. And honestly, so for everybody listening out there, just really glad and that you've been tuning in and hope you've enjoyed these. They're a lot of fun to have, but they're even more fun to have when you have them. But for real, we really think the message isn't done until you've talked about it and it's made a difference in your life. Because that's the point of everything we're doing. We are trying to be what the church at its core is people that are following Jesus and therefore living in a brand new way that reflects a totally different lifestyle than the way the world teaches us to live. And that's not in a defiant, because the world sucks way. It's like, because the world's great and could be great. And we want to live in this way that God designed it to be because it leads to maximum human flourishing. And I know it's a really big goal, but the really small goal that's tied to it is just like, let's talk about it.
And put in the reps.
Do it. Yeah. And put in the reps. And it's like when we do it weekly, every single time we hear this new thing, it just changes everything because that's 52 new things that you did in a year. And that actually changes the world. So you can always find the Sunday Conversation Guide in the description below. And also, honestly, love to know how you're enjoying this. And if you want to hear us talk about certain things or you want to figure out, basically just tell us if you're having fun listening.
The feedback.
Some feedback. It doesn't help. It doesn't hurt. So you can email at tommy@missionventura.com. Shoot me an email and we'll chat. I'd love to hear if you've been having fun. Find the Sunday Conversation Guide below. Go talk about it. Go do it. We'll see you next time.
Peace.